The first thing that we had to do after we disembarked from the buses was to receive canvas mattress bags and to fill them with straw. And out in the sun, which was around 110 or so degrees, it was dusty, it was hot, the wind was whistling through, and we had to use this dusty straw for the innards of the mattress covers, and had to pack those and then carry them into our so-called apartments.
The so-called apartments were crudely built army barracks made of wood and tin. The barracks were arranged in orderly rows. Each barrack was about 20 by 120 feet, divided into 4 or 6 rooms. Usually a family was housed in one room, 20 by 20 feet. And barbed wire fences with guard towers surrounded all of the camps.
Okay, one of my memorabilia was this barbed wire. We had barbed wire fence encompassing our camp, and we had about 8 or 9 guard towers, and the soldiers had machine guns and spotlight, and they were there to protect us. However, I always wondered, why did the machine guns turn into the camp rather than out? Sometimes I wonder if it was fair that the Japanese Americans only were incarcerated, because we're at war with Japan, Germany, and Italy, and the German Americans nor the Italian Americans were incarcerated. Only the Japanese Americans were incarcerated. Why? I don't know.
The answer to that question lies in the way we apply our in-group bias to race or ethnic background. Favoring our own ethnic group is called ethnocentrism, which lays the groundwork for racism.
Ethnocentrism refers to our bias to like people who are similar to us more than people who are dissimilar. We like people who belong to our ethnic group. We think they're better than other people. We think they deserve more than people in other groups.
Racism is ethnocentrism with power to enact it. So it's one thing for you to think you're better than me, but it's another thing for you to have the power to influence my life by virtue of what you think about your group and my group.
A lot of people consider it to be racism because it was categorization that included all of these things, that the Japanese Americans were easily categorized, so that's the cognitive component, they're categorizable as Japanese Americans. Then for the evaluative component, the prejudice things, they had these negative qualities because Japan did attack the United States, and so you had these negative feelings. And then the overt discrimination, okay, well, let's take their possessions away and put them essentially in a prison. And the fact that it happened to one racial group and not to another indicates the institutionalized power of this decision.
It was easy to pick them out. I'm German American. I can remember my father saying, "Don't go around saying brot." I was 9 years old when the war broke out. So there was feeling among the German Americans that maybe of uneasiness, but we looked like everybody else. And so there was just absolutely no way that they were going to be able to pick me out over someone else. I believe that was the biggest thing. Plus, those days there was a tremendous amount of prejudice to anyone that didn't look like you did.
For many of the internees, the camp experience was extremely traumatic, but it was also something of an adventure, depending on how old you were or what you left behind.
As a 13-year-old, there weren't very many responsibilities. Sometimes it was a bit uncomfortable physically, but as a youngster, I don't think that made too much difference. I realized that the older people, people that had lost their businesses and such, were devastated, and it was a period of a lot of anxiety for them.
I think Jerome was one of the few camps that used wood-burning stoves, and there was a forest on the side. Now, my good memories of camp are like seeing the fireflies for the first time.
June Honma was one of the few internees from the Hawaiian Islands. For practical and economic reasons, it was too difficult to intern most of the large population of Japanese Americans there. The events on the mainland, however, didn't prevent many of the Japanese men from volunteering for service. The Army formed a separate battalion for them, the 100th, and sent them to fight in Europe. And then, when it became necessary, the U.S. decided to draft internees from the mainland. They became the 442nd.